Hello and welcome to panel 3 of the STI Forum. This is a virtual innovation exhibit hosted by the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs in partnership with the Global Innovation Exchange. And today we're here to share a discussion about education innovations catalyzed by COVID-19. My name is Lee Simpson. I am the co-founder of an innovation practice called Brink and the innovation director for the Global EdTech Hub. I'm joined today by a wonderful panel of innovators who I'm excited to introduce to you and for you to get to know over the rest of the hour or so that we have together. I'm joined by Charles from WeGo Innovate, Joel for Technology for Social Change and Development, Felipe from Swarm Mob, and Paul from Peripheral Vision International. I would like to start by welcoming you and inviting you to interact with us by posting relevant questions for the panelists in the Q&A box to the right of where you're seeing us. Well, I hope I'm pointing in the right direction. I will be asking the panelists a subset of the questions that you put forward today. And I'm really counting on the audience to help make this a really rich and lively discussion. When you're posting your comments, you will also be prompted to add your name, to add your organization, which you can do if you like. But the most important thing is that we get your questions and we get your thoughts and comments into the chat. We have been preparing for this panel and like a lot of people kind of talking about the pandemic, of course. And one of the things that we were saying is that if we were in the real world, we would be swapping business cards on the corridors, we'd be bumping into each other at the coffee table, and we would be doing that wonderful thing that happens when human beings interact and network together in the real world. We are unfortunately still in the middle of a pandemic. So this Q&A panel on the right of the video is the best thing that we have to make up for all of that kind of human interaction. So please get involved, tell us who you are, tell us where you're coming in from, and ask questions of this great panel. So let's kick off. It is really a great pleasure of mine to be here talking about education, in particular, how innovations have been catalyzed by the pandemic. So why innovation and why am I so passionate about it? Well, according to the Global Education Monitoring Report, a report that came out in 2015, it would take something like 70 years under business as usual to achieve universal primary education for girls, including those who are marginalized or otherwise disadvantaged. 70 years, I mean, if you think about it, that's 2085 under business as usual. And that's a report that was written before we faced a global pandemic and all of the kind of thrashing that education has taken as a result of it. So, you know, for us, it's clear that innovation is absolutely required if we're going to make some decent headway towards SDG 4. While much of education has suffered through the pandemic, we're also here to really shine a light on some of the brilliance that has emerged through the emergency response. And all of our panelists really will show this in spades. So for us, yeah, it's clear, reaching SDG 4 is going to take more than business as usual. It's going to take innovation. And while anyone can have an idea, one of my colleagues at Brink defines innovation, I think, quite elegantly as the hard slog to make change happen and make change stick. And, you know, the people that are on the panel with me today have really been living and breathing this hard slog to impact. Each of them has been playing a critical role in the biggest edtech experiment imaginable over the past year or so, the biggest education experiment imaginable in the past year or so. Today, you are going to meet people and hear stories about ideas that have gone from experiments to being fully fledged pretty much overnight, and become something, you know, the most watched television show in Ghana. Stay tuned, that's coming up next. You're going to hear stories from rural Uganda, where a humble cell phone has become a learning platform and pivoted to support communication through the pandemic. You're going to hear about reverse innovation, where innovation trialed across Africa is now being imported to the USA. You're going to hear about things like enterprise software and school management software, and how that has met the wisdom of the crowds. And you're going to hear about how this might just be a moment for us to address the gender balance in tech. So I'm gonna hand over in just a minute to give each of our panelists a kind of moment in the light and share a bit about what they've been up to. But before I do, I want to just remind you all again, please hit us up with comments and questions in the chat and help us to make this as vibrant as if we were bumping into each other around a coffee table. It's a pleasure to be here. I think I am going to hand over to Charles, who's going to kick us off. Let's hear from you at WeGo Innovate.
Sure, thank you, Leah. Hi, my name is Charles Agbemashior, and I'm the founder of WeGo Innovate and the creator of the GH for STEM JUNEOS Challenge. So the GH for STEM JUNEOS Challenge is a curriculum-based practical STEM TV show. It features junior high school students across Ghana, 65% of them girls. These junior high school students use materials they can find in the environment to create experiments that explains scientific or STEM phenomena. Now, a good example of that is using sweet potatoes to power a light bulb, or use sugar solution to explain how the submarine works. How cool is that? Like, it's really, really cool. You should see it. If you haven't, you should check out our website, www.wegoinnovate.org. Go to the menu and then look for Watch STEM Experiments, and you'll find some really cool experiments there. Now, currently, the show is airing on 5 TV stations across Ghana, and the results are amazing. Youngsters really, really, really do love it. And what they do is when they watch the show, they replicate the experiment, send it back to us, which is great. And in fact, in some cases, we have youngsters doing their own original experiment, right? That's really cool. Now, on top of that, our phones are buzzing. They're calling us saying, when are you coming to my school? You know, can my school feature and all of that? And we really want to do that. And we're hoping to go there. And also with your help of you, if you can support us, we'll be able to do more of that. And we're hoping that will happen. Now, when we showed the JUNEOS Challenge on TV for the first 3 months, something incredible happened. We became the most watched show on that time belt with 13% viewership, over 13% actually viewership, which translated into about 500,000 households. Now, we think that could be more because, you know, data. Now, we think that could be more, and, you know, it was still amazing. We loved it, it was great. But the question is, what made this possible? Our innovation is centered around real people, and I'll tell you that in a minute. Now, 2019, we challenged teachers across Ghana, 100 of them, in public schools, and said, come up with experiments, practical experiments, using materials you can find in your environment. The trick, let your students be the ones to conduct the experiments. Kick ass, right? We then traveled to these schools traveled across Ghana, filming the students. You should have seen it. It was amazing. They felt like superstars because here we are, camera, light, action, and they were the people who were more important in this situation. It was so amazing. The teachers told us that when we left, the numbers of interest of students in science went up, right? Another thing that happened was we had the videos that we made. A lot of a fellow from Lead for Ghana will use it to teach, you know, his students who are preparing for the national exams, which we call the BECE. It's like an entrance exam to senior high school, right? And we had a teacher, or we had a scientist who had 3 girls, a mother with 3 girls, 3 daughters, and wasn't sure how she's going to break, you know, science or, you know, introduce her daughters into science, right? And now they're watching these TV shows, we're hooked in it. They could be going out and be thinking, Mommy, the show is about to start, when are we going back to go and watch it? And these stories are all things that we've experienced during the show, when the show was showing. And we've learned some really key lessons as well. One of them is, for instance, peer-to-peer learning and practical STEM education in the JUNEOS Challenge really helps students to feel that anybody at all can learn STEM or science. It debunked the notion that, you know, STEM or science is difficult, right? Another thing we saw was that teachers became facilitators. Now, teachers are very important in our process because for us, they're the guiders. You know, you can come up with policies and what have you, but the teacher is the one in the classroom and they need to be able to help, you know, push that policy forward. And what we had was teachers becoming the facilitators and leading the way. Now, what we say is, if we can expand in Ghana and expand in the rest of Southern Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, for the next 5 years, we could literally be seeing young people graduate from high school with a skill set that would be phenomenal, that would be great for the work, the place of work. And we've seen some really quality people come out of high school doing some great stuff. Now, I don't have enough time to explain all of this, but if you're interested, please reach out to me and I can tell you more about our findings. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. Camera, lights, action, very inspiring stuff. Who knew sweet potatoes were capable of such things?
I know, right?
Very exciting. Paul, let's hear from you next. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Paul Filzone, and for the last 20 years, I've been thinking hard about how to use the media to make change in the world. For the last 10 years, I've been the executive director of Peripheral Vision International, which has worked with a variety of partners across East Africa to design media campaigns for them, where our TV shows, videos, e-comics, audio, and other outputs have been seen, heard, or watched or interacted with hundreds of millions of times across dozens of countries. At the end of this talk, I'm going to tell you the single most important lesson we've learned in all those years and all those campaigns. But before that, I want to talk about just one of those projects, a project called Wangi. Now, the seeds of Wangi were planted in Uganda when we were advising a UN agency on a sexual health campaign they're working on. And we went far out into Karamoja, which is one of the most remote regions. And what we discovered was that everywhere we went, people were using cell phones. But they weren't phones like we're used to using them in the West. They were basic phones. And they weren't using them in the same ways we're used to. So they're using them to listen to the radio together or to call one another. They couldn't use the SMS because they couldn't read or write in Karamojong and many in English as well. So that was out as an opportunity. And they're also listening to radio because, again, that spoken word connected to them. So we began asking ourselves, how can we turn this tool, this simple tool, into a teaching tool at scale for last mile communities? And we began a design thinking process. We worked backwards. And we thought, okay, well, story and narratives, they help us to understand and to tune in. Emotions, they help us to decide and also to remember lessons. Interaction is always good. Interaction is excellent for boosting learning outcomes. What eventually emerged was Wangi. And the idea is simple. Our stakeholders can call a toll-free number on their basic cell phone and encounter a story in a spoken language that they speak, a story that teaches. On what topic? Well, it depends on what our partners are working on. So if they're working on agriculture, for instance, it might be harvest has just ended. What will you do with your crops? Press 1 to sell them now. Press 2 to store them until the prices go up. So you can use interactivity and play to role play, to practice counterfactual thinking, to grow people's understanding and explore the different consequences of their actions, and to call back and do it over and over again. We wound up winning an award from MIT Solve. And with our technical partner, Viamo, we began to scale. So we are now in 17 countries across 3 continents. We've reached 3 million callers on issues from family planning to public health to climate safe agriculture to savings, livelihoods. Partners have included GIZ, British Council, PSI, Mercy Corps, and many others. And it's also financially sustainable right now through those partnerships. But what happened? The pandemic, COVID, it happened to all of us. And we realized we needed to move fast and make things across all of our projects, including Wangi. So we began to very quickly, because we weren't hindered by the pandemic, use media where others who use workshops were shut down. We used media to create Wangi on COVID that hit those key points early on in the pandemic about hand washing and masking. We designed a Wangi and launched it across 10 countries really quickly. As time went on, we did custom games for GIZ, Mercy Corps, and others, and have now reached more than 1 million callers across 12 countries. So I said at the beginning that I was going to tell you the most important lesson we learned in all our many years of making TV shows and other media. And that is this: you begin and you end with your audience. You need to go to where your audience is. You need to understand them. You need to understand what tools they have or don't have, how they use them. You need to understand what messengers they trust or don't trust. You need to identify the commercial distributors who are already reaching them and figure out their interests. Do you have some shared interests that can benefit everyone? You begin with your audience, you design backwards, and then you end with your audience with a successful media campaign. The other thing we did over the COVID year was we worked with some of the biggest scholars, the leading scholars in entertainment education, to do a co-edited volume where dozens of authors came together and contributed their wisdom on how to use media to make change. This is available free over the internet at the Palgrave Macmillan site. It is open access. I highly recommend you check it out. You can read about our work and about the work of BBC Media Action and the dozens of others we've worked with. And I'm happy to answer more in the Q&A. Thank you for your time.
Great, thank you, Paul. Very, very, very cool stuff there. And I'm loving the riff on moving fast and break things, move fast and make things. Brilliant. Looking forward to questions coming through for you there. And while they do, I would like to invite Felipe to take the stage and tell us about SwarmMob.
Thank you, Leah. Hi, everyone. Thanks for your time. My name is Felipe Prado. I'm co-founder and program director of SwarmMob. In the next 5 minutes, I want to share with you how we have created a scalable e-learning system that is transforming public schools during the pandemic in Chile, fostering education for global sustainability through the use of network project-based learning methodology. As everyone here knows, humanity is facing urgent global crises, which, among other things, require preparing the new generations to face an unpredictable and complex future. That's why the UN is strongly committed to achieve target 4.7 of its Sustainable Development Goals, aiming that all learners acquire the knowledge and skills needed to promote sustainable development. This target could present some achievements at public policy level in Latin America, but it's barely impacting the grassroots school practice. We confirm this every day in our fieldwork with middle and low-income schools, especially during this pandemic. Now, the key point is that while COVID-19 has accelerated the digitalization of education, even in vulnerable contexts, it exacerbated the need of a more meaningful and motivating pedagogical approach with more emphasis on skills development, which was, by the way, a pre-pandemic challenge. At the beginning, most of the teachers we observed insist on a virtual version of the traditional memory lecture-based class, sometimes supported by the use of tools for online interactions like word clouds. But now they express the need to transform the essence of their teaching to promote an active and autonomous involvement of their students, connecting with their interests. To address this challenge, we are supporting pedagogical innovation through the use of project-based learning methodology, or PBL. This methodology invites students to learn from collaboration to solve real problems. Even though this is not new, most schools have serious troubles adopting it, even more online, given the cultural change that PBL implies, including teachers' professional development, classroom management, and curricular challenges. That's why we create SwarmMob, combining the ideas of swarm collective intelligence and smart mobs coordinated with technology. This is a learning management system that helps schools to generate internal capacities to transform the curricular teaching by creating sustainable impact projects. But it also includes a network component with a social media that promotes innovation through inter-school collaboration to reach a collective impact. For teachers, it facilitates the interdisciplinary design and management of social and environmental pedagogical challenges, with a digital interface to drive the learning experience of the students and tools for workgroup management, personalized feedback, and the measurement of 21st century skills. In this way, students learn the curriculum and empower themselves by creating collaborative projects that impact on the local expression of diverse UN SDGs. In this process, they can share their solutions in the SwarmMob network and generate collaborative synergies with projects from other schools. On the other side, school management teams have tools to support teachers' professional development and learning analytics to track the progress of the implementation. Since 2018, we have developed a robust platform working with 8,000 students and teachers from 18 schools. The success of our working model based on the acquisition of B2B software subscriptions by schools and districts proves the needs of this kind of solutions in the educational systems. With all this, we are now preparing the expansion of our purpose in Latin America and other regions for which we are looking for investment to accelerate our growth and partnerships to reach new schools. Today, we have the great opportunity to move towards a paradigm shift. This pandemic is teaching us that we must prepare the new generations with social and technological skills to collectively face this and other long-term global challenges. We invite you to move forward together on this pathway. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Felipe. Really inspiring stuff there from you. Joel, let's hear from you. And then the questions, I'm pleased to say, are hotting up. So there's a lot of stuff for us to get stuck into together once we've heard from Joel.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joel Ogunshola. I'm from Nigeria. I currently am the co-founder and director of partnerships and sustainability for Tech for Dev. Tech for Dev is a non-profit, and our focus is to drive economic growth for young Africans through digital skills, advocacy, and empowerment. Our initiative is called the Women Techstars Initiative. Over the last 5 years, myself and my colleagues at Tech for Dev have consistently worked on building digital skilling initiative. And the problem we sought to solve was one, to be able to create opportunity for young Nigerians and Africans to be able to get access to decent work engagement through access to the internet and digital learning infrastructure. But what we then found out was a lot more striking, which was the fact that there was a huge gender gap. So you would have, at best case scenario, 8 men to 2 women within any digital skills program. And then we then decided to create the Nigerian Women Techstars program, which was luckily supported by Microsoft. And the objective was to train 2,400 women and girls across Nigeria, across 12 focused underserved communities in Nigeria, around 5 digital learning tracks. So software development, games, IoT, design, and cybersecurity and data and AI technology tools. Now, what we then realized after 2 years of running this program, and also in alignment with already available statistics, of the fact that investing in women gives the community 3 times the return on that investment. We decided to upscale our goal to a more ambitious goal of reaching 5 million women across Africa by 2030. This goal was unveiled at the UN Solution Summit, which we were a part of in 2019, but then COVID hit in 2020. And then we had to re-strategize and then adopt a lot more technology and learning tools in delivering our program. So last year in 2020, we ran virtual cohorts and learning programs that helped us to simulate what that learning experience would be for people across Africa who are going to be part of our program. Subsequently this year, we've launched our program in 5 countries: Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, South Africa, and Egypt. And this year, we're going to reach 10,000 girls and women between the ages of 16 and 40. And we're going to be training them on deep tech and learning skills. And then the initiative has 4 different programs. We have the open day sessions, because understandably, a lot of women still battle with the understanding of the role of women in STEM and the role of women in technology, within technology ecosystem. And so we're bringing seasoned industry experts to come share their experience and their journey in technology during the open day sessions, so people can make an active decision or choice. We have the bootcamp sessions that are focused on getting people from zero to understanding the core basics of technology around design, product management, software development, data analytics. And then we have the flagship program, which is our Women Techstars Fellowship, which is for 3% of the 5 million women. So this year we got 5,000 plus applications from across the 5 countries, from which we've selected 262 fellows who've begun a 1-year journey into becoming a good number of them we expect will become experts working within technology ecosystem, either direct physically or remotely in Africa. A number of them we're expecting to become entrepreneurs. while a good number of them will also go on to study digital skills at an advanced level. What the program affords young girls and women the opportunity is to basically come from a place where they know absolutely nothing about technology, but from a place where they really want to get life skills that are able to ensure that they are better economically placed within the society and are relevant within the fourth industrial revolution, and I can have access to decent work engagement and put them at a place where they can then competitively access these types of opportunities. Over the last 3 years, we've had a lot of success story from Fatima, who left school with no job, who now works at one of the leading technology support companies here in Nigeria, tech expert, to Yewande, who's gone through the Facebook incubator program for entrepreneurs. They built an e-learning solution for schools here in Nigeria, to a number of other young girls who have gone through our program. We're looking to expand the program exponentially across more countries in 2022 and beyond. And we're looking for partners who are able to support us technically, as well as learning delivering partners in country to ensure that we're able to reach more women. Essentially, in overall, we practically believe that enabling women become technology leaders is critically important to ensuring economic prosperity for indeed everyone across the globe. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thanks to everyone in attendance who's been dropping questions in as they've been occurring. I think that we have some clear kind of questions that have been bubbling up to the top. And to start with, there's a kind of whole cluster of questions around how we're serving the more marginalized communities and how we're reaching those who are typically underserved. And so I'd like to start with a couple of questions for Paul and Charles. These questions have come in from Rachel. And she's asking, how are you promoting the intersectional social equity of girls and girls with disabilities in the work that you're doing, Charles? And I think it was someone else who was asking, Paul, of the 17 countries that you're working in, how many of those are sub-Saharan, or are they low middle income countries, or are you reaching low middle income countries and the more marginalized communities within them? So let's start there with reach and more marginalized folks. I'm going to ask the panelists to keep it brief so that we can try and get through as many questions as possible. Charles, do you want to respond first?
Yes, sure. Thank you very much, and thanks so much for the question. So for the GH for JUNEOS challenge, one of the key things, or the most important thing for us, was that we needed to get to remote areas, because what you find is, especially for a TV show, most TV shows don't feature people from remote areas because the logistics it takes to get there, the production planning, all of that is very difficult. But we wanted to get that because where you're born or where your location should not be a hindrance to the access or what you can enjoy as a child or as a kid, as a young person. And we think this is fun and we should go there. So we do that. We traveled that far to do that. In terms of disability is also a very important area for us. So if you look at our content, if you ever watch our content, we use a lot of audio and text. Anything that happens has an audio and text for it. So it's supposed to help people with disability also function. And even in our show, we did feature people with disability, and that for us, nobody should be left behind. It's really, really key to do that. And that's what makes our content really original. And it doesn't look plastic, if you might call it. Yeah, if I've answered the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Let's see if that sparks more conversation in the chat. Paul, what about you in those 17 countries?
13 of them are in sub-Saharan Africa. And actually, we've had the biggest success in Mali this past year, which is very marginalized population. The reason why is because this tool is the one that reaches the marginalized. There's very little other content being created for them. And it kind of expands out beyond the energy grid and what have you. But briefly, I would actually say Charles is really onto something. He's using broadcast television. I mean, in terms of reach and scale and cost per impression, broadcast television is a growing medium, probably the biggest legacy media growth in sub-Saharan Africa over the last decade of any other. And Charles, I do want to talk to you afterwards because we both did something similar this year. We also did a science show for girls, aimed specifically at girls and girls in science, called NGen, which we developed and is now running in 11 countries in Africa. and soon will launch on satellite and also in the United States as well on Common Sense Media's new platform in Discovery Ed, which is in half the classrooms in the US, bringing lessons from women scientists in Africa to school children in the United States. So we're super excited about this. We're seeing a lot of growth in and looking for collaborators. So reach out to me at director@pvinternational.org if anyone's interested.
You mentioned partnership there, and it's kind of been a common theme in everything that you've all said. It's kind of been in the DNA of what you've all described. And you know, if the pandemic has showed us anything, it's that when there's an emergency, people can rally around and partnerships are formed faster and more meaningfully than perhaps ever before. One of the questions that's getting a lot of upvotes, and just feeling very mindful of the forum that we're in today and who might be in the audience. I think I'm gonna invite each of you to maybe give 10-second answer to the question: what is the one thing you want governments, UN agencies and other stakeholders to know about how they can best work with you to scale the impact of your innovations, knowing that they might probably be in the audience? What's the one 10-second response that you might give them? And maybe since we've heard from Charles and Paul already, I'll start with Joel or Felipe. What would you want people in attendance to know?
Well, yeah, in our case, we have consolidated now a powerful web system after a laboratory process. So we are now in the process of expansion, looking to incorporate new schools and countries in our community. So an important next step for us is to get, for one side, new investment to implement an accelerated scaling strategy, and also to contact new schools that could be interested in participate of this project. So I think that maybe strategic alliances with district of schools or that kind of collaboration.
So funding and routes into schools for your products.
That's it.
How about you, Joel?
Thanks, Lee. So for us, within the countries we're expanding to, right now 5, but then, you know, over time it's going to grow. One of the biggest challenges we've seen with girls and women accessing these skilling opportunities is infrastructure. And so that's access to devices. And, you know, in a lot of cases, also affordable internet connectivity. So if for government, we're definitely happy to receive technical partnership in forms of existing learning infrastructure within various countries that we're able to make use of to be able to further drive increased access. And then also, if it's possible to get funding for to subsidize cost of connectivity, or pay for the cost of connectivity for the different fellows who are going through our programs, that would be really unique ultimately.
Thank you, Joel. Charles and Paul, what about you guys? What's the one thing?
So I kind of agree with Felipe and Joel, same thing, but so that I don't repeat, I'll rather talk about this. Government and other agencies need to be more accessible. And if they see something that works, we need to rally around and help. I'll give an example. In Ghana, it takes 6 years. A child goes from junior high to senior high school, 6 years, and they're in the university, or they might not go to university and they're in the real world. Now, 6 years, the clock is ticking. There's no time to politic. Someone's life is in danger. And also, even to the UN, I feel education, quality inclusive education is the one key that can sort of level the playground or the playing field for all the sustainable goals. If a child is well educated, climate change will be an issue that will be solved. A child is well educated, healthcare will be solved. They can fend for themselves. Housing will be solved. Think about it, partnership, collaboration will happen. So we need to really, really open the doors. I understand that there need to be red tapes for reasons, and it makes sense, but we need to figure out how to do this. It's very, very key. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. I'm sure no one would disagree with that.
And just to kind of build on that, this pandemic showed us things move quick in the real world. And if you're going to innovate, you need to be able to walk the walk and not just talk the talk about innovation and pivoting very quickly. So tech can do it, but they're beholden to their shareholders. Those who are beholden to their stakeholders in the countries that they serve, they need to learn to move a little more quickly as well. Because when the funding and support follows the need for the action, that doesn't do anyone any good.
Some great tips there. So whoever asked that question, I hope you were taking notes and that you learned something from the panel. I would like to check in with you guys about where you feel your innovation and the work that you've done over the past year. And each of you has done spectacular work, and really kind of, I think the pandemic has catalyzed new kind of leaps of progress for each of you in your own way. Is it going to sustain? How do we make sure that this isn't just part of like an emergency response, and that overall education systems are strengthened through this work, and that the work that you're doing endures? What are the decisions that you're making, or are there topics that you're grappling with to make sure that the good work and the progress that you've made through the pandemic is sustained beyond?
Okay, so can I go?
Go for it.
So, at WeGo Innovate, we're a bit of, it's a chicken and egg situation for us right now. So we can either get money from private sector, and while you're getting money from private sector, you're not solving the real problem at hand, because if you put pennies to education, especially when it's basic education, that's going to be a problem. And we need to work with private sector and get some money from there, and then go back and do some, good work, right? So that's where we are. Will it be great if we can find funding and go straight to the point so we don't waste time? Like I said, the clock is ticking for these young ones. And so if we can do the work, so Joel doesn't have to do so much work by the time that people get to him, it'll be very, very important, if you know what I mean. Yeah.
How about others? Are you concerned about sustainability? How are you grappling with it? Joel, does what Charles says resonates with you?
Definitely it does. And, very interesting that, Charles' work forms the foundation of, the work we go on to do, which is, something we found out to be a key problem. Basic digital literacy and understanding of, soft STEM skills, poses a huge barrier, at the point where they are then looking for decent work engagements. I think for our initiative, because the end goal for us, what success means at the end of the day for us is access to job or entrepreneurship opportunities. We kind of find that the program, we've been able to attract a number of interesting private sector partners, because as more organizations are starting to think about inclusivity and diversity and gender balance in the workplace, their talent teams are very interested in where do we get the pipeline from? So we've had organizations reach out to us to say, we want by 2025, 50% of our workforce to be women, and they are willing to pay for that upskilling process. And it's already interesting that since we already provide that skilling process, we're then seeing a number of private sector partners support the work we do. One of our biggest partners has been Microsoft, and there's been phenomenal success with the partnership with them, where they've been able to even create job pipelines through their Microsoft partner network. So beyond taking in people from the program to intern and get eventual jobs, they've also been able to extend that to their partner network. So from a sustainability standpoint for us, that's, finding that good relationship and synergy with private sector, because we already provide a solution to a problem they have, which is that inclusivity and bridge gender gap within technology ecosystem. And also for our beneficiaries, they being able to get access to decent jobs and engagement also is, a solution in itself for them.
Yeah, that's super. So building that kind of pathway into what might come next for those who are being trained by you and working with you. Really interesting. Thank you, Joel. I don't know if others want to come in on the sustainability question. Paul, Felipe, you're welcome to chime in. Yeah,
briefly, we've had the most success where we leverage commercial competition to our advantage. With Wangi, say there's different mobile network operators who are competing for for contracts. This free content is a value add for them. So it's actually a tool for their competition. With our TV program, which again is on in a dozen countries right now, there are multiple TV stations within each of these countries competing for eyes. If you give them really good first high quality content, pro bono, you're gonna get those millions of eyes for free. So leveraging those existing systems of competition will cut your costs massively. That's what we've learned.
Great advice there for all the innovators in the room. Felipe, how about you? How are you making sure your work in the pandemic endures?
Oh, well, at the beginning of the pandemic, I have the mic open, yeah. At the beginning of the pandemic, we were in shock, like many people. We worked mainly with low-income students, and about 2/3 of them couldn't participate in the virtual activities of their schools due to technological access limitations. So we started by adapting our system in a more inclusive way, allowing students to participate in the educational experience, connecting from cell phones or computers of different capacities and with different bandwidths. So this is a great progress of the pandemic for us. But it was only after that problem got better that the real challenge began. This was the aforementioned challenge of transforming the heart of the pedagogical approach. At the beginning, while we advanced in our technological development, SwarmOf was applied partially in a single subject, as in a laboratory mode. But with the pandemic, schools started to be more receptive, and we took on the challenge of expanding our spectrum of action, involving the entire institution in systemic processes of school transformation, including network collaborations, for instance. And we have had important results in this line. Currently our system involves, in some cases, the full staff of teachers and directors in a reconceptualization of their way of teaching from an active approach. And many of them began to re-enchant themselves with their love of teaching, thanks for this strange pandemic context. So now our community can continue to grow, whether in virtual, blended, or face-to-face teaching. So we have a very optimistic future in view.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm going to ask one question that has been upvoted, which is a question about specifically your partnerships, Paul, and how they've been going for you. I think it was specifically how your partnerships have served your progress over the past year. The most important partnership that you have, and how it served you over the past year.
You know, when you put things together, we can't do everything ourselves. So the best kind of best solution is a collaboration that relies on people's strengths rather than trying to build up their weaknesses. You find a bunch of folks who are all relying on their strengths. So our biggest success over the past year has been our partnership with Viamo, who we do this game with. They have the technical expertise and the partnerships. We have the content expertise. We get clients who have a mission and a need for reach, right? But not the either technical or kind of creative content expertise. And then you put that together. So focus on folks building on their strengths, and that's how you can amplify.
Thank you. Very much people-centered businesses. I think all of you have kind of touched on the importance of the human dimension. I'm told reliably that lots more people have joined in the audience. We've only got 7 or so minutes left. So if you have any questions that are quick for the team to answer, please do drop them into the chat, and we'll do whatever we can to do a quick fire round. Lillian asked right at the top of our discussion, and it's been upvoted consistently, to what extent are you sharing what you're up to with other African countries? We all know education systems are quite unique to the countries that they're operating in. How are you sharing from one country to the next? And is it easy or hard, or do you have any advice or reflections on how to enter new markets? Just building a bit on what Lillian asked at the top of the chat. A lot of focus on Africa, but we'll touch on South America before we close, Felipe. Charles, you've come off mute. Do you want to take the floor?
So in terms of the GH4STEM JUNEOS Challenge, we have a model that works. Now, it has a lot of local context. So if we were to, and because we're escalating things in things experienced around the environment, so if you want to talk about how to preserve food, you need to use the local food that is preserved as something relatable so that the youngster can get it, right? So the same way if we're going to another country, we first of all need to pilot. So at the moment we're in post for Nigeria. So we're going to pilot first and do just a small, just one state and understand language and context first of all. But again, the team is local. We're just going in, film the first set with them so they understand how we're filming it and it's gone. So in terms of the blueprint of the show, we have a blueprint. But in terms of language, things to use to create that, experiential learning or application, we need to adapt as we go. And that's very easy. And also because you need your collaborators to be local so that they can understand the local mindset and how people think. So you can use that, you can bring that back into the lesson and it makes it, you can create learning as you play because the culture has differences and context and all of that. And you need to have that in the mind. So yes, it's very adaptable going forward to other African countries. And we're very much interested in doing that, more countries.
Great. And what about you, Paul, as someone who's scaled into 17 or so countries?
Yeah.
What are the challenges?
Well, the challenges versus the opportunities. The challenge is focusing too closely on the specific because each of these countries are many nations. Probably the line was drawn around many languages. In Uganda, for instance, there's 54 languages and dialects, right? So what you need to always find is the universal. So for instance, I talked about the TV show NGen, which I'm pitching a lot because I'm so excited about it. This was filmed in Tanzania, Uganda, South Africa, Nigeria. And you find that the particular diversity, you create a chorus focusing on the universality of story and stories that transcend boundaries. And that's how you scale. You find what cuts across because we all enjoy stories from other places, but they have to be that universal humanity in them of stories is what cuts through it. So finding that's the trick, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Keep it muddled.
Joe, we'd love to hear from you.
Our experience in expanding, today we're in 5 African countries. One of the biggest, lessons or challenges has been language, especially when you coming from Western Africa, going into Northern Africa. I think that challenge has been most obvious in Northern Africa. And you'd realize that there's also a number, cultural nuance around, how people perceive things, even very little insights as much as consistency of, people going through a program and how consistent they are, through the initiative. And that also would then influence, how we allocate the number of slots we have for fellowship programs, going forward. I think the biggest help we've had, again, is being from, Microsoft, considering the fact that they are a corporation that is span across the globe. We've been able to leverage their on-ground team within their philanthropies unit, as well as their business teams across the 5 countries we're in now, in Nigeria, in Ghana, in Kenya, South Africa, and in Egypt. Also, coincidentally, the country managers for Microsoft across 4 of the 5 countries are women. And so they've also lent their voice, to driving the initiative and ensuring that we have the best partners on the ground to work with. But the biggest challenge has been language, and we're learning that we need to also think about localizing the learning content as we then scale across, other African countries. I think that would be the biggest lesson for my expansion this year.
Thank you, Joel. And in about a minute, Felipe, someone did ask a while back if you could talk about working with all the different education systems in Latin America, and how that has been.
Well, let me put the mic. I'm here. Well, in our case, I completely agree with Charles. I think that it is very important to know the local mindset of each country or even each community. So in order to scale to Latin America, we seek first to carry out initial pilots to adapt our technology to the local culture before thinking about further growth. Otherwise, can emerge some unwanted difficulties to be faced. You need to go step by step for a strong growth. I see that. And in our case, we have the support of government institutions such as Corfo, the Production Promotion Corporation, and the Accelerator Startup Chile, who are supporting us very much, connecting with a network of regional mentors that have a lot of know-how and knowledge and practical knowledge to make this kind of strategies of expansion.
Thank you, Felipe. And that was amazingly delivered within a minute. Right, we haven't covered everything, not by a long shot. There are lots of great questions in the chat about decolonizing aid, impact evaluations, and there's lots of props for the whole panel and everything that they're up to. Please get in touch with the people that you've met today. I believe their contact details are going to flash back up on screen so that you can make a note of their websites, their email addresses, all of the great kudos and questions that we didn't get to. Please, I know that the whole panel will be delighted to hear from you, so do send them on. The group is also going to be starting the second education panel momentarily, so you can access the link to that live stream in the blue box at the top of the Q&A section. I think I'm going to keep it within 20 seconds and just say thank you so much to this panel. It's been brilliant to work with you and get to know all of the innovation and the great work that you've done over the past year. And thanks to the audience for keeping me on my toes on the very vibrant Q&A that you made possible.